everyone, and welcome to Oddly Specific. I am so excited for this conversation. When I saw there was a book entitled Private Equity that wasn't going to just be finance stuff that I will never understand, because if you are a longtime listener, you guys all know that I got an E in Algebra 2. So the fact that I've been able to learn as much as I have about private equity is sometimes shocking to even me. But I saw that there was this memoir that was coming out of a personal story. And I thought we have to talk to this author. So I'm very excited. We have Carrie Sun with us today. Carrie Sun was born in China and raised in Michigan. She holds an MFA in creative writing from the New School. Her first book, Private Equity, was named a most anticipated book of 2024 by NPR.org, Oprah Daily, Town and Country, The Millions, Financial Times, and many more. The memoir chronicles Carrie's experience working as the sole assistant to a billionaire hedge fund founder. Carrie's role, while well-paying and exciting, comes with trade-offs to her physical and mental well-being that make both Carrie and the reader question, what does it truly mean to succeed and achieve the American dream? Carrie, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Meredith, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here
Are you scared to know that people can get E's?
today. Great question. Actually, when you actually said that, I thought it was like A, B, C, maybe D, or and then F. But yeah, so I was not actually certain there was an E possibility. So fun fact, I actually once got a C. And that was actually in math because it was in the first semester of freshman year of high school. And I think for some reason, didn't think the homework was important. And I just did not do the homework. And I got a C mid semester and I was like, okay, I have to turn this around. I did turn it around, but seeing that letter was shocking to me. I don't know why I thought not. Maybe I thought the homework was optional. I have no idea what happened. And this is why I have nightmares about forgetting to do work.
Oh my gosh, I still have high school nightmares. And
Yeah.
now, like work nightmares too, like old jobs. We'll get into it a little bit more, but I could see how a couple of the memories from your time would stick with you.
Yeah, high school and work are traumatizing in many ways. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, for my listeners, this is, as I say, the only podcast that covers everything from private equity to Pete Davidson. And I just wanted to find, because in the book, a lot of what Carrie refers to is hedge funds, because that's sort of what seems to be the bread and butter of the firm that you were working at the time. So I want to just define hedge funds versus private equity. Private equity firms typically invest in private companies and see returns on investment by improving the company's profits. On the other hand, hedge funds use complex investing techniques like hedging and leveraging to see returns on investments in the market via securities like stocks, options, and futures. So I think when I think about it, listeners, it kind of comes down to the private and the stuff that's being publicly traded. That's the easiest way that I can think about it as someone who, as we have established, didn't really do well in Algebra 2.
That is a Meredith, that is a very succinct and accurate description. And that's how I think of it too. Like most hedge funds, the first hedge fund started as a long short equity a strategy investing in the public markets. And so of course they do very complex kind of investing, and many in less public and less liquid markets. But by and large, like I do think of that distinction as hedge funds a lot more in the public markets and beyond equity, and usually private equity is obviously private and not just. And they also have other distinctions, like private equity is a lot more illiquid, but both of them try to deploy capital, usually on behalf of large institutional investors, or people who have money. They help people who have money make more money, and that's basically all you need to know.
Yes. Well, that kind of brings me right to our first question, which is, and I know this is going to seem like maybe a strange question to some people, but I need to know how you came to the title private equity.
I think the title did confuse some people, but I think, Meredith, hopefully after reading the book, I think you hopefully understand that the title, by the title, I do mean the industry and where I was working because, as you say, the firm I worked at in the book started off as a hedge fund, but they very quickly started a private equity arm to kind of their holistic strategy and portfolio strategies. And so I do mean that industry and asset class, but mostly I really mean private equity in the sense of private in the sense of self and equity in the sense of fairness and justice. So, what I'm really asking is this question of self investment. What is our investment in ourselves? And I think that, the concept of financialization in our daily lives, I think, has also been taking over the English language. When we think of words like venture, security, we often have a financial connotation first. And I think, and like unicorn, it's a mythical being, but really we think of startups first, these billion-dollar startups. And so financialization has been completely taking over the English language. And I think private equity as well. When we think of private equity, we immediately think of, layoffs and, big money, not being kind to employees, workers, and squeezing people for efficiency, do more with less. But I want to reclaim the term private equity for my meaning, which is a more literary and personal and internal one, which is all about what is our private equity in ourselves, our self-investment? How do we end up living the lives we want, become the people who we want to be? And also, my book has all sorts of different relationships. Primarily, the primary one is me and my boss, but also there's me and my mom and me and my ex-partner at the time. And there are all these relationships founded on, different class status, race, gender, and how do you negotiate an equitable relationship in these private situations between two people? And I think my book tries to answer that, certainly at the workplace, but also more broadly and personally.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And it's interesting because the word equity actually has like a very positive connotation, right? Gretchen Morgensen
Yes.
talks about this sometimes. But also the word private is that so much of what happens in this financial world is private and behind the scenes. And you go on these websites, you're interviewing, you can't find that much about this place, to even do the preliminary research. And so I have this question for you, which is you're first interviewing for this job and you go on countless rounds of interviews and the reference check was like,
Yeah.
I
That was insane. Yeah.
I would call it unhinged. And,
Yes.
they literally cherry pick people that on LinkedIn and say, like, we want to talk to these people, like almost like just pulling up someone's Instagram and going, okay, I want to know them. And you're
Yes.
like, do I even still know them? And so that all happens. And now as you sit from where you are, is there a moment that stands out from that interview process for you that you're like, ooh, red flag?
Great question, because the red flag started immediately and from the interview process, and I ignored all of them. For example, talking about this concept, I think often about time and time equity. And when I, put my name in the proverbial hat in the ring and I went on, I said, like, yes, I would like to go through this process. They asked me to come in 2 hours for an in-person interview. So I already had plans. I had lunch plans to meet someone who was so important to me. To me, actually, the person who helped me and my family immigrate to America and to help my parents and me achieve or try to achieve our American dream. I canceled on her. She was on her way to meeting me, and I canceled on her in order to go on this interview. And that tells me, I mean, I could have said no to their like immediate asking of my time, but I didn't feel like I could say no. I felt like if I said no, the opportunity would go to someone else. So I had to say yes. And so that kind of shows me the kind of unilateral control that employers have over our time and how we can't say no. They tell us when, they tell us how. And then to extend on the same concept, even during the interviews, I was at the time taking a fiction writing workshop at NYU. They asked me for my availability for interviews, and I gave them, like I said, anytime during the week except for the 2 hours that I have class 2 days a week. They scheduled interviews exactly during those hours. So what did I do? I chose not to go to class that I paid for. class that that I hoped would help me develop my craft and get me closer to my own personal dream. I sacrificed all of that and just went on the interview, you know. And I think it's definitely telling something about my character at the time, but also I think it's a very universal thing where we feel like we can't say no because we feel so insecure about our lot in life, no matter where you are. This is across, I think, industries and jobs, and no matter, you know, how secure your job is, I think the American capitalist system has made us feel insecure about our financial status, about our working conditions, and we feel like if an opportunity comes, we kind of have to say yes and drop everything. And so those are all the red flags, and that was even before day one of the job.
It kind of reminds me that, I hear this all the time of when you are interviewing for a job, you're also interviewing them, and you should be paying attention to just the interview process itself, because it's sort of a preview of what perhaps the experience might be like. But I think when you are, the age that you are in this, I also started a job around that exact same age that was a very sort of big step for me, and it was very exciting. And the interview process was nothing like Carbon, but there were flags that,
Yes.
after I got older and cleared my head a little bit about it, I realized, oh, that was just indicative of what the experience was going to be like.
Exactly. Totally indicative. And just back on this time angle, they were not respecting my boundaries when I told them, I need this. Everything else you can have, but I need this. And, you know, they were like, well, that thing that you need for yourself, that doesn't belong to you either. That belongs to us.
And we're not even paying you yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I jumped at that, you know? And
Right.
so I rather than, and I went on this journey of like self blame and criticism, and then it was like I felt so bad of how could I have jumped so wholeheartedly into the situation. But then I realized it's the system that makes you feel like you have to in order to get to the next step, to get to the next step on the corporate ladder or whatever ladder you want to be on, you know. And so now I'm hoping to be kinder to everyone who's been through this experience, but also my former self, you know, and because we only know what we know. And I tried my best during the interview process, and it was just a whirlwind from completely the beginning.
Oh, totally. And you start the role, and there's this thing that really jumped out at me, right? This is a company that has this. I was kind of jealous of the state-of-the-art fitness facility, okay?
Yes.
You guys,
Yes.
they were fully stocked with Lululemon leggings and like workout stuff so that you could literally change there, throw it in the hamper, and then it would just get clean, and then, whatever. You never have to buy yoga pants again, which that's a perk. But you're in this place, and it has all of these incredible things, food and kitchen, and they'll DoorDash you before anyone's even door dashing, but they
Yes.
don't have HR. So, what do
Yes.
you think the impact of not having human resources was in your experience? And how common do you think that is in places like a Carbon?
That is a such a insightful question because I think it's showing, well, I try to show him my book, a firm who is so detail oriented to the very, very last detail of every luxury you need. But I think the luxuries that were provided to us were to kind of keep us at work, working, and it was all in service of an optimal worker. Because then you think, well, why is there not HR? Well, I think that where the firm spends their time and money, because time and money are resources, and where we all have actually, you know, 24 hours in a day. They did not think spending any time dealing with the people side of work, the human side of the experience of work mattered. That it was as simple as that. And they thought, why would anyone need HR? Because people just solve their problems like immediately because people are, you know, working all the time. And if you are just committed to maximizing efficiency, increasing your productivity, and making money, why would you have any people issues? Because obviously the right, you know, the right decision or solution to anything is just the one that maximizes profit. So
Right.
there doesn't need to be human resources, you know? And I almost think, I mean, what kind of blows my mind is I don't even think there were necessarily nefarious at all in their intentions. It was just like, well, why would there need to be HR? Because there doesn't need to be HR because we, you know, we are a small family of workers who are all dedicated to the same profit maximizing goal. And you know, I drink that Kool-Aid, and I believed in that too. And I was like, well, there doesn't need to be HR because there are no HR issues. Well, of course, in any workplace, I think just we are human and we have issues and problems, and I don't even like the framing of issues and problems. They're just, I think of them as everyday quotidian workplace situations, and we are people at work, and things happen, and it's not even a bad thing that things happen. Things always happen because we have different personalities, you know, and we should be hiring in a diverse way that is not just finding the same personality, you know, the lacrosse player from, you know, Duke, who, you know, is also majored in economics. You know, I'm just saying, like, you know, we should be broadening our profile, and therefore we disagreement is a good thing. And it just kind of showed me if there is not an HR department, they're not only not providing an avenue for anyone to resolve actual like human resource issues, of which there definitely are problems that arise and occur, but also that, you know, when something does happen, it's just not given the attention and import that it really like deserves. Because I mean, I think money cannot cover up what bad feelings at work if you feel like you're treated unfairly in some situation. And I think, you know, more than anything, I actually think people do want to work hard. I actually think people do like work. They just want their work to mean something, to matter, and also be treated like a human, you know. And I just think many corporations don't do that. And I think it's especially meaningful in the context of private equity, because I think private equity has been owning more and more of America, just all, you know, businesses from hospitals to single family homes to, you know, I was just reading something about Michigan and mobile parks. Like
Yes.
private equity is owning more and more of America. And so how the culture of private equity and the workplace culture of private equity, they're private equity investors are the people many workers in America have to answer to. And it's where their efficiency ultimately is going to end up benefiting, you know, in terms of profits. And so I think it matters to take a look at how people in the industry of private equity, but also hedge funds and finance, Wall Street in general, are working. Because I think it's a unfortunate metaphor of how we're working across America.
Yeah, it's sort of a trickle down effect, isn't it? So if
Yes.
even if the private equity firm is, you know, I'm just going to make it up, in Los Angeles, and they have, you know, a small deli chain in Florida, the way that they function, I think, can also, even just from not having HR, like that's sort of the mindset of that, can have a trickle down effect. You mentioned in when you were just talking a little bit, and I'd love to expand on this. One of the things that struck me when I was reading this is that in almost all of the top roles where you're working, or even when you go to other places, it was primarily men. And
Yes.
a lot of what I could gather, and a lot of what I see in this is my own non-backed research, is that overall these firms tend to be white men. And this, but in your book, the supporting roles are almost all women. So what's happening there?
Yeah, it's a really tough issue. I will say that when I was graduating college, and there continue to be many wonderful programs to help women, especially to get on the investment side of both. I mean, I call these firms on the buy side, but also in investment banking and consulting. You know, I think even though the firm I was at definitely, I would say they definitely did not have any explicit or implicit sort of, you know, codified bias against women or people of other marginalized groups. I would say though that the firm I was at, and this is representative of so many other places I've worked, really care about something called cultural fit in their recruiting process. Fit, and especially cultural fit, personality fit. I mean, it's so, how do you even define that? I don't know what you're looking for, but if you're looking for fit, I think you're looking for other people like you. So if you start with, someone who founded a firm who happens to be white and male, then they're looking for other people who fit their profile. So it ends up being a rather closed loop and a closed network that you're kind of recruiting from, even though you're maybe not consciously doing it. And so I'll give you a perfect example from I went to school at MIT, my MIT days, where I was friends with this fraternity, and I would see kind of what I think of as a chain migration of like the fraternity onto Wall Street. And so what happened was like the older brothers of the fraternity would get hired onto a desk at Goldman Sachs, a trading desk, and then they would just next year during recruitment season, summer internships, they would just like pull their younger brother in the fraternity to come do an internship. And so, it's not, they weren't explicitly like no women, no, I don't, but they were just trying to recruit like-minded people. And so it was just, I think so many of my friends in that fraternity went directly from MIT to Goldman Sachs on that same trading desk. And I think that kind of process writ large is what happens on Wall Street.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the one that always dings is Wharton. I see
Yes.
it's like Wharton is like, that is to me, and that doesn't mean that somebody is inherently bad or somebody isn't qualified. It just, like you said, it's about cultural fit, which, often can have bias, even if you don't mean it to. Thank you for for answering that with such an really sort of, I think, important way of looking at it. When you think about the fact that there are always human implications when a firm takes over another corporation, right? How often do you feel like the human aspect of, say, hey, we're going to be taking over, these apartment buildings that are in San Diego, and, this is going to affect all of the renters there. How often do you think those things are taken into consideration?
Well, I would say just from my personal experiences, great question, that, I worked at not only a firm in the book, but also another huge hedge fund that also had a venture side and actually more and private equity side. Venture is technically private equity, and this is again, I was not privy to all conversations, but I was privy to many conversations. And I would say that from what I can tell, at least the people that I've worked with, they do try to do the right thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They do care to do the right thing. And people know that, layoffs, cost cutting, austerity measures, like, at workplace austerity measures are, it's going to be tough for people, especially when people, this happens often. People leave and you don't hire new people to make up that work. So the people who are already there have to, do like two people's jobs. It's hard, but then I see just so much rationalization about why that has to be the case, and then it gets quickly into like, well, this is just the game. This is how you make money. And if other people are doing this, we have to remain competitive with the other firms that are, on these like best of lists, best returns, biggest hedge funds, biggest private equity firms, and also public firms have their public, to shareholders really to answer to, the public to answer
Right,
to,
of
which is
course.
also, yeah. So, they have a fiduciary duty to maximize, their profits and give returns to shareholders. And so I do see people actually wrestling, with this moral issue of the human side of the equation, but they always come out on the side of making money. So that tells me something else. It's like, yes, you think about it, but I'm a materialist in the sense that like, how are you materially making worse or making better someone's life or society? And really, so yes, it is nice that you know, have some heart and care about the people that your, you know, corporate decisions are affecting. But at the end of the day, you're still making that tough decision to, you know, worsen their lives. So materially, you are making worse other people's lives and enriching the pockets of, you know, who are the investors in private equity? They're usually already rich people. Yes, there are pension funds and, you know, foundations, and that's all, you know, wonderful, but ultimately it's making the rich richer. And at the cost of Main Street. And so while I think I see people considering the human side of it, the money side always wins. So and I think that that is the problem.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think it's really great to have your perspective on that. And it actually gives me a little bit of hope to know like at least it's a conversation in the room sometimes, right? Switching gears for just a second. You have this lovely friend that you meet about a quarter of a way through the book, and she really becomes your wing woman, I think, in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And I guess I'd just love to know, what do female friendships mean to you as an adult? And do you have any tips on maintaining these friendships as, you know, we go through careers like the one you went through or life transitions?
I think female friendships are so important, both at work and outside of work. And actually, you know, just to focus on my book for one second, you know, at
Yes.
the start of the story is when really, you know, my recruiter, a random recruiter reaches out to me and kind of presents me with this opportunity. And I think I'm pretty sure, but I think the first text, you know, text message that I include of anyone is from my recruiter. My book ends on my final day at work with a whole string of text messages, and they're not about work, they're not from men, they're not from any recruiter, but my female friends, both at work, outside of work, because they are the people who really got me through the most difficult time of my life. And you know what? They were going through the same things I was going through, you know? And so was I on my best behavior? No, I made many mistakes, many of which I detail in the book. But you know, they were also struggling with their own burnout, their own feeling lost in life. And you know, my friends at the workplace also, you know, we had some ups and downs. You know, some people were less than willing to help me, but when I was burnt out and needed some help. But you know, at the end of the day, and this is what I discovered writing my book, and that friendship is still there and important because they were also, I think, going through the same issues. And I think even if some of them maybe didn't recognize it at the time or even now, I'm not sure, but we're all in this together, especially women, and especially women who are often in roles in which they are the ones with less power and less, you know, equity in the situation, as it were. And so all I want is for women solidarity to really try to make the working conditions and friendship conditions better all around. And so my friend, as you mentioned in the book, a quarter of the way through, the wing woman, Parmita, she went through so many crazy, just insane recruiting processes as well. And she, like one of her, she also had a crazy what was it, like a reference process.
Right.
And
Like they contacted her job when she was still interviewing. Like
yes,
they,
yes,
I was like,
yes,
oh, come on. Like, listen, I
yes.
was really rooting for her in this. I really just loved this. Anytime in the book when it would be like, okay, we decided to like go away for a long weekend, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, thank God
Yeah,
those two
me
are
too.
getting the hell out of Dodge.
Yes,
But yes,
yes,
she was dealing with a lot of the same stuff that you were dealing with.
yes, yes. And one of the places she was interviewing at called her references on Thanksgiving Day and then asked her, like, hey, why are your references not returning our phone calls? Because that is showing how they don't like really believe in you or something. And it's like, no, it's Thanksgiving. Like, I'm sure they're with their families or something, you know? And so it's all just part of the theme of how these workplaces, they think they kind of own our lives and all of our time. And what we deem personal time is not really personal at all. It's actually, they feel like they kind of own 24 hours of our lives. And I just think that just blatantly not okay. So I think it is upon, women to really band together, form these friendships, because what private equity wants and what these workplaces want is for us to turn on each other, be individuals, and feel this
Right.
competitiveness and kind of siloed existence, And I'm trying to dismantle that.
Yeah, I think that's such a good metaphor also too, that the way that private equity operates is that it's so quiet. There's so much mystery behind it. And that's to kind of keep communication quiet. And that's kind of, I think, what a lot of times they want to happen at work, because when we band together as women, we are so much more powerful. I have two last questions for you. And the one of them is, in the book, you are the sole assistant to a billionaire. And I know that there are many moments of kindness from him. And there's kind of this ongoing debate in the world right now of, can billionaires be ethical? And so there's that. But I have another question, which is like, do you feel that billionaires need to exist in general?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't. No, I think they should be taxed way more. It probably, I mean, I'm giving away my politics here, but no, I am I am a Bernie Elizabeth Warren supporter. I am fully on the left. I just think high taxes. Now, actually, so here's the thing. I mean, I'm going totally out of left field here, but I actually think high taxes, if the loopholes were taken away and everybody had to do it, I mean, the billionaires would kind of complain a lot and, obviously try to not make that happen. But at the end of the day, I don't think they will care, because actually what they care more than anything is just their placement in life. So if
Right.
everyone's wealth went down and they were still at the top, who
Who
cares? They're still
cares?
at the top. It's okay. Yeah. But so I think we should just I believe in the wealth tax. I also believe in obviously closing the private equity carry interest loophole, and I just believe in a fair world. And I think the people who right now are billionaires, they can still we can still give them some of their win, in that, they do, some of them do build companies of great value with, maybe cars that people like to drive and products that, people use to text, and I think that's great. And so they should be, rewarded, but just not at the level that they have been in the last, I would say, several decades.
Right. Like we look at someone like a Mackenzie Scott who is, taking her wealth and putting it to such great use. And I have this moment of like, okay, well, Mackenzie Scott can be a billionaire,
Yes,
but
exactly.
yeah. And then my last question for you is, so much of this memoir made me think about burnout, rest, and how important that is. And it feels to me like perhaps your relationship to that has changed from what you thought rest looked like in the beginning of the memoir when you first started working at Carbon. I was just wondering, especially writing this book, it must have brought up a lot, because there is so much more in this memoir, y'all. Like, I need you to read this because I want to talk to all of you about it. There's so much more that I think everyone here will get something out of it. But what does rest and self-care look like to you now?
So, what's interesting about rest and self-care is primarily my understanding currently in 2024 of rest and self-care is primarily centered upon control, and control as a necessary ingredient of the quality of my hours. So in Meredith, you just mentioned in writing this book. So when I was in the active drafting phase of this book, and in the last several months in the publication process, like, I have been working so much. And actually, I was just doing the math, like, I wrote this book by working 7 days a week, at least, like, approximately about 10 hours a day, and so in terms of hours, I was actually just in pure quantitative terms, I was working more in terms of hours than I even was working at this job. But the main difference and about self-care is that I have more or less control and agency and freedom over how I spend my time and my days. And what was really not working for me at this former job is that I did not have any say over my day. If I got, I mean, this is in the book, but like if I got an email, I had to respond to it immediately, even if it didn't have a question, if it was on a personal topic. I just had to respond to everything immediately. And so, I could be in the middle of a vacation or just having a day and on the treadmill.
Right.
I
On
could
the,
just
yeah.
be in the middle of yoga class. Yeah. And I had to respond immediately. So you don't have any time to yourself. It feels like, but more than that, you feel like you're playing second fiddle to your own journey, your own story. You're not a main character in your own story because all your time is spent in service of someone else and someone else who is trying to enrich his or her or their investors. And so in terms of self-care now, what I ultimately have is, I still love writing. So I love work. I'm still in many ways a workaholic, but I have agency and I have freedom of choice over how I spend my time and when I work and what I choose to devote my energy on. And that I think is priceless for me and something that I really will not give up. And how that manifests in terms of rest is I'm able to then choose exactly when I'm off and when I'm on. Whereas before, when I'm off and when I'm on was completely decided by my work. And even if I had time off, it was only when my boss told me I could have that time off. And so, yeah, my current relationship with rest and self care is really one founded upon personal agency and freedom. And I hope that's what other people can find in their lives as well, and devote more time to finding those pockets of what I think is private equity, where you can really have control over your days.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I'll leave everyone with just this tip from Carrie's memoir is that, at this time because I know people are like in it and they're like, I can't get out of this job for X amount of time, whatever, Meredith, you started making like appointment sort of stuff. Like, okay, I'm buying tickets to go to the ballet or So it was like, put a little investment into something to set yourself up to have a little bit of control, to have some joy, like make an appointment for something that you can't cancel. So that I thought was such a great little pro tip when you're in
Yes.
it. But Carrie, I am so grateful for all of your time. Where can people find you?
I don't do a lot of social media, but I am on Instagram at Carrie E. Sun. E is my middle name, Y-I. And other than that, I have a website, carriesun.com. And I think I'll probably periodically update my Instagram with any sort of career related news, but also I'm working on a few new and exciting projects that I can't publicly share yet. But yeah, I hope to share soon.
Amazing. Well, we'll put your website and your Instagram in the show notes. Thank you, Carrie, so much for being with us today. And everyone, go out and get Private Equity, a memoir. I know you're going to love it. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my favorite part of the episode. It's where we get oddly specific about something, and I'm excited because we have Van with us today from the Best Week Ever podcast. Y'all know this one. I've been on it. A lot of the friends of the pod have been on it. Molly's been on it. Emily Rose has been on it. And what I love about this podcast is it harkens back to the VH1 show that I used to love back in the day, which was Best Week Ever. And you would talk about just the pop culture moments of the week, and then you would determine who had the best week ever and the worst week ever. And Van is doing that for us now in current times, where it feels like, I mean, I guess there's not more things happening, but everything is just so accessible now. Do you think they should resurrect that show?
Definitely, but I feel like they would even get so much judgment onto like what topics they would probably talk about just because of how much news is accessible today. I mean, like, I feel like I'm missing on things as we're recording, and it's a bummer because like by the time it's the following week, it's old news.
And there were some great people on that show. Do you remember some of the people who were on there?
Oh yeah, I feel like Paul Shear was just like, because he was on Watch What Happens Live, and I was like, oh, I remember seeing you on Best Week Ever, just you having your comments. One of my favorites was Jessie Klein, who does like Big Mouth, and she's like a stand-up comedian as well. And her story, just I've talked about it so many times, but her story being involved with Best Week Ever is that she was just hanging around, and they were like, hey, do you want to just be a talking head in this episode? And yeah, she was fed what was given, and she like talked about it in her own manner. And like, I wish we had that now for up and coming comedians, because there's just so many right now. Like, it's, and there's a lot of female comedians nowadays too that we can highlight in a show like that.
Yeah, I know. I think it was kind of a breakthrough way for people to get their name out there and to have a credit, et cetera. And listen, I'm out here slinging my Matt Lauer jokes to anyone who will have me. But I posted on Instagram asking if people remembered MySpace or if anybody was a MySpace enthusiast, because last week there was the ban heard around the world, which is that I got my TikTok account banned. And I was really bummed about it. And if people want to hear the nitty gritty of it, it is on the Patreon. And just trust me, once you hear it, you'll be like, okay, that's spicy enough to keep it behind the paywall. But I was laughing because when it happened, I was really bummed because I love TikTok. But I did say to someone, like, the funny thing is, if I had lost my MySpace back in the day, I think my reaction would have been more severe than losing my TikTok, which, TikTok is it's not my full-time job. I have a full-time job, but TikTok is sort of my part-time job, and I love it. And it's so fun. And it's like, how else do I have direct access to Paris Hilton? It's like, that's the only way, even though we don't talk, but like, if we could, it would be there. I just, I was bummed, but it really did remind me how addicted I was to MySpace. And so I don't know if everyone is familiar with MySpace, but MySpace was a social networking platform. It launched in 2003, and it was actually a competitor to Friendster. Did you ever have Friendster?
No, I was like too young to have Friendster. I always thought it was like a Gen X kind of a app back in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah, I didn't have Friendster either. I remember my roommate had Friendster before she got a MySpace, and I remember thinking that was like really cool. But it was founded by Tom Anderson and Krista Wolf. And Tom, you might remember, he was the person who would always pop up as your first friend on MySpace when you would make an account. And I didn't know this, but Tom was actually a child hacker. When he was 13, he hacked into Chase Bank and made it through like multiple levels of getting people's credit card information. And then he like trained a bunch of kids in his neighborhood also how to hack.
How is he not working for the FBI?
Right. Although I was thinking about it, and it was 1984 when he did this. And I was like, I feel like I could hack Chase Bank in 1984. Like, I mean, like they were just getting started. Like the passwords were probably people's like dog's name with an exclamation point at the end.
Or 1 2 3 4. Yeah, I can totally see that, especially in a workspace. But that's still so smart of him to do that. And I wonder how it started there and then ending up in MySpace.
I know. And I know that he and Krista Wolf were working together for some type of like internet company. And so I'm sure you're like around a lot of these ideas. You see something like Friendster and you're like, okay, how can we make it better? Right. And so they start MySpace, and it gains popularity almost right away because it's really customizable. And that's one of the things that people love. You can put music on your page, you can have photos. It's one of the first places that I really found out about blog posts. I remember you could have a blog within your MySpace, and it becomes a really major platform for emerging artists, especially musicians, to kind of share their work and connect with their fans. And it was the largest social networking site in the world from 2005 to 2008, before being overtaken by Facebook. And what I think is so interesting about this is like, I know people say the internet is forever. Like, don't get me wrong. And, kids, like, don't put up things that you wouldn't want to be found 20 years from now. But like, the fact that like MySpace doesn't exist anymore in the way that it did, like I can't get my old profile. Like the internet lasts forever, but it also like doesn't last forever. How do you feel about that?
No, it's upsetting because there's two websites, MySpace and a picture trail. I don't know if you remember. It's like one of those photo websites where you would just see people's pictures. Like I feel so old explaining that to people, but
Yeah, but I think you and I are like the same age, like a community web shots, right?
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And like I would kill to have those photos back. There was no way I was saving them. I thought having it on the internet because we were told that this would be like forever. I would wish to go back and have those albums.
I know community web shots, for people who don't remember, they could really cause some of the biggest friction with your friends because usually one person owned a digital camera in your friend group. Okay. And I can tell you right now, it was never me. Okay. One person would own one. They would control everything. They really controlled the social dynamic of the group because they would be the ones to put the photos up after you went out at night. So you would go out and then the next day you would wake up and you would wait for someone to upload the pictures onto community web shots. And I still remember the girl who had the digital camera. She would get so mad at us. And sometimes the photo album title would be like, hosting these because they won't stop annoying me.
That is so, oh my God, you just took me back to a time where, yeah, I remember having a digital camera was such a big deal and uploading it like indie sleaze time era of just like having those uploaded.
Yeah, it was a fun time too, because that was also how you found out what was going on with other people, because then you could put what you would do, kids, is you would put your community web shots photo link into your AIM profile, and then people could click on it and see, your pics.
Or
So
in your away message, I would do that. I'd be like, hey, pics from last night.
like now when we say that, it does sound so unhinged that we would go to like grab brunch with our friends and we would put up a link of photos so everyone could see our photos from last night. But that's essentially what you do with Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a little bit more, Instagram is a little bit more of a, that was a little bit more of an opt-in because you had to actually click on the link and be committed. And I just had this flashback to, do you remember you could also put up a link and it could just say something like pics on it? And then really it would take you to like a landing page that would be like your username. So people would know if you were clicking on their link.
I used to have, yes, it was like an extra link that you would put while you were coding to put this link where people would, yeah, click on. And that used to be my favorite thing because it would show you how many times they have viewed it as well. And it's like pre-stalker me in my teens, like seeing how many times this boy I liked clicked on my photo link.
Yeah. And like, I know we worry about kids today, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. I know we worry about kids today on the internet and stuff, but like, trust me when I say that like 18 years ago, when we were all kicking around on MySpace, it was not good either. It was not healthy either. And look at me. I'm a fully functioning adult woman who is sitting here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, desperately needing to take a shower, talking about MySpace. Like, I'm fine. So don't worry. If you have kids and you're worried about their time on the internet, don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, the best thing I can say is that we grew up with YouTube, like the early days of YouTube compared to like nowadays. I feel like the kids nowadays don't know what we had to go through.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And do you remember joining MySpace and what was that like for you?
Yes, I was in high school. It was a big deal. It was like like a graphic design dream, just learning how to code, putting your favorite song, putting like a cute little bio. I felt like the bio was such a big deal because it would just be a paragraph about yourself. And yeah, and then your top friends, which was just so like high school, you would put like your top, there was a top 3 as well. I feel like later in the later year of the popularity of MySpace. But yeah, it was just great to connect with friends while and like uploading photos of what you were doing in the summer, like what you were doing that weekend, plans of like getting together. For me, MySpace was like a huge music escapism as well, just finding out certain bands. Like I found out One Republic in MySpace. That's how I remember them in my early
Wow.
just like my aunt showing me like you got to hear this song. I found them in MySpace and then like I started following them and like now today they're like what making tracks with Timbaland, right?
Well, also too, it's the idea of like, and you can relate to this too, and I know that a lot of people listening can, is like your aunt telling you about this thing. So it means you have to sit down at the computer and just listen to the song. Like you would
Yeah.
sit down at a desktop and you'd be like, I'm gonna listen to, like I remember I'd be like, I'm gonna sit down and listen to music. And like I would just sit at the computer and have like music playing at me. Like that is now I can't imagine that. I'm like, I gotta sweep the floor at least. But like that is what people did.
Yeah, no, we definitely had like the me time of just having an hour being online, and definitely music was part of it while I was on MySpace.
Yeah, I don't feel like people listen to music probably when they are on the internet now because most people I feel like are probably on their phones more than anything else, right?
Mhm.
So you're not blasting One Republic while you look at Instagram because there's all these like music and video and images hitting you. So you have a MySpace, you have a top 8. How do you go about designing your top 8? Because for the Gen Zs at home, the top 8 was essentially just like think of Instagram and that you'd have, tons of people that you would friend on there. And like I think more similar though to Facebook, the way that MySpace worked was like it was kind of mutual. So like if you friended someone on MySpace, it meant that like automatically you were friends back and forth, as opposed to like Instagram, you can like unfollow and that's a whole other thing that like sometimes I don't know about you, Van, but there are people who like I don't even click on their profiles. Like I don't even look at certain things because I'm so afraid that they unfollowed me. Like it
I get
hurts.
that feeling, yeah.
It hurts to be unfollowed.
It does. The top 8 was like a huge deal. I remember it was like a friendship contest. I remember putting like my best friend and then the boy that you liked. And then it always ended with like what I was listening to. So it was like Rilo
Right.
Kiley or like Paramore. Like it was just very that emo kind of a lineup for my top 8 all the time.
Because what you could do is you could basically, it was like scrapbooking it. Like you could order your people, 8 of your people, 8 of your friends. So you might have 200 friends on there, but you could order them in positions 1 through 8 on your profile. And yeah, like there was kind of a pecking order that was like not healthy. And I also remember like there would be fights and people would take people out of people's top 8s and the drama that would go down.
I remember 2 most popular girl in high school having a fight and like waking up to MySpace and seeing their friendship just like they're not even in rated in that top 8, and that's when like gossip would start. Yeah, that was like a huge deal. And I also remember I feel like just the graphic of like new message, new friend, like of the envelope was so addicting, and you would also get message when you were part of a person's profile of tops 8, like you got moved to top like number 3 or blah blah blah. It's like it was such a big deal. Like MySpace made it a huge deal if you were like someone's top 8 on their profile.
Oh yeah, it was like a dopamine rush to find out that you were in someone's top 8. Like I mean I guess it was basically like the the teen version of being a bridesmaid or something at the time. So I spent a little time prepping for this episode, and one of my favorite things that I found was the different celebrity MySpaces because at the time, celebrity culture was so different back in 2004, 2005. And I also feel like celebrities were both more accessible and then also less accessible. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like the photos would be more accessible for sure. It's more personable, as in like compared to like, there's no, like, you can tell like who's ever part of that profile is like they're in charge of posting their own photos. As in nowadays, it's not really like that with Instagram.
Right. Like there's the picture that came out yesterday, I believe, of Travis and Taylor and Prince William and the royal kids. And people are like, I just think it's a picture of like two friends at a stadium game. And I'm like, I don't think so. But back in the MySpace days, it might have been.
Yeah, it's crazy how people are eating that up. It's weird.
So I did find Kim's top 8 from circa 2006, and I want to walk you through it and discuss some of the placements. Okay, number 1, who do you think number 1 is going to be?
Back like in 2008 or 4, I'm
A little
thinking
earlier,
2003.
probably.
Yeah, 2003, Paris.
So it is Courtney,
Okay.
but that's a really good call, don't you feel like?
For it to be Courtney?
Because it's a sibling.
Yeah. And she's the oldest too at that time.
Right. And then clocking in at number 2, we have Rob, which also, again, I agree, sibling, good choice. Number 3 is Brody Jenner. That's a step sibling. Again, you're really stacking heavy with the siblings because no one can ever get mad at you for putting your sibling above a friend on your top 8, right?
Unless you're that sibling in part of the family.
Right. You could get some infighting going on there, but like, don't you feel like Rob probably gave no shits where he was on Kim's MySpace? And like Brody's a stepbrother.
Yeah.
And then Courtney would care. But then we have number 4, which is my favorite. Clocking in at number 4, Ray J.
That was when they were together.
It was. Now, can you please make some type of defense of why it was okay for Kim to have Ray J as number 4?
Because that's like the middle. It's still on the top tier of the line, but it's like still top 3, top 4. Like that first row is such a big deal.
And it's all family before Ray J.
Yeah.
So we will allow for this. And then it's a bunch of people who I don't think I really know. There's another Courtney who I think is a friend of hers to this day. Say what you want about Kim Kardashian. She's still rolling with these girls that she's known for like ever. I am enjoying her bio. Her little bio summary says, I'm a princess and you are not. So there.
I also love that it shows how many friends she had at the time. And it says Princess Kimberly had 856 friends. 856 people compared to like today. I don't even remember anyone on MySpace having over 1 million fans, just because it was such a like local kind of a get together with friends and see them at the VFW for a show,
Right. Yeah, like it wasn't. You could also look at someone's MySpace and not be friends with them. Like being friends with them didn't always give you the perks that you needed. It wasn't like Instagram the same way. Profiles were almost always public. And that's why I'm also sort of fascinated by this, because it's just like, we don't do this anymore, but we did do this in the early days of Facebook and MySpace. But it's like right at the top, Kim's details, status, in a relationship, here for, friends, orientation, straight. Like the fact that like they would ask people their sexual orientation like so quickly off the bat. And I remember the same thing on Facebook. It'd be like interested in men or women. Like it's like, whoa, okay.
It's very MASH days, like in very high school. Because I think that was their target. I mean, like I was in high school, like the minute that Facebook was just so exclusive, like you had to have the ID of going to college. Like that was the first thing I did when I got accepted to a college university, was like, oh my God, I got my email. I'm gonna sign up on Facebook.
Oh my God. Yes. I remember the day that Facebook came to my undergrad. It was a spring day and we got Facebook. Me and my roommate legit stayed up till like 2:00 in the morning. I was closing my eyes. I was like still seeing friend requests. I'm like, this is the greatest experience of my adult life. Like finally. But I will say, just to close the loop on Kim Kardashian's Facebook profile, it did say children someday. And she did have children eventually. But another celebrity MySpace that I found that I was kind of fascinated with was Taylor Swift's MySpace. And I just want to read just a few lines from her 2007 bio. I play a 12-string guitar, and I have since I was 12. I'm a songwriter first and foremost, and I have never written anything I didn't mean. I am obsessed with lyrics. I love Tennessee and talking to people. I was born on December 13th, 1989. 13 is my lucky number. I can tell you some really weird coincidences that involve that number. Long story short, 13 is good. I am the most competitive person I know. I never really got into sports, so I guess you could say music is my game. Wow.
And that's just a snippet, Meredith. Like I'm looking at the paragraph. It's not even a paragraph. It's like a block.
It's just like text. Like it's just like, whoa. Like, and I mean, the funny thing is like it's still so indicative, I think, of who she is now. Like, I don't believe that she would write this now. Don't get mad at me, Swifties. Are you a Swiftie, man? Do you identify as a Swiftie?
I love Taylor Swift, but I also hold her accountable, and I don't really like what she's doing right now with dropping all these records while like Charlie XCX has her new album coming out. Billie Eilish, I think she's really like a mean girl behind the scenes, even though she gives that like I support women kind of vibes. But yeah, I love Taylor Swift's music, but I just don't like what she's doing right now.
Would you say that this line rings true from Taylor? I am the most competitive person I know.
I see one that's highlighted, and all you need to do to be my friend is like me, which is true. Like, that's all you have to do to be Taylor Swift's friend.
I mean, it is kind of amazing that, in this, if you had found this, back in the MySpace heydays and read this, no one would have batted an eye at it. Would I have read it out loud to my sister and been like, oh my God, listen to this? But like, no one would have been like, wow, this is way too much information, or like, I can't. But if someone put this out now on like an IG story, that would be wild.
You're so right, because I'm thinking back onto like the main reason why MySpace was so much fun was because of the bios like this. Mine probably sounds psychotic as well. I would like mention about like you'll catch me hanging out with my friends, Mikey, my hero, blah, blah, like stupid shit like that. Like, and we're here making fun of it. But back then, yeah, this is just so normal.
I know. Also, that's the other weird thing is like you used to just like drop random names. Like I remember in my bio, like there was a part where like I just had like shout outs to people. And I remember when we first got MySpace, I remember like people were just writing like testimonials on each other's walls. Like it would be like, Van is amazing. She's like my favorite person in my homeroom. She always looks out for me. And it's like, okay, like no one was asking for like an Angie's List review of you, but like people just did that.
It was like the digital media of scrapbooking. You're so right, like a yearbook. It was just us, like our little albums with our captions.
Well, and it's also funny because as this, and I'll link this in the show notes, you guys, so you can read this whole thing because it really, actually, it does deserve an entire read. But I love this part where she says, if you start a conversation about Law and Order, SVU, or CSI with me, we will be talking for at least an hour.
And hey, that is still true. She's named her cats after them.
Right? So listen, at least, the thing that actually is kind of interesting here is that I also think it's important to hold Taylor accountable. I also I don't believe in billionaires. So that's a whole other thing. But you can't say that she doesn't sort of seem authentically herself still when you read this.
No, I think her mind is still there. You know how there's that like thing everyone talks about, like where your mind just kind of stops at a certain age, like 38, 42. I feel like Taylor is still in high school mentality.
Well, for a lot of celebrities, I think it's when they got famous.
Yeah, when they peaked. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think that Ina Garten, Barefoot Contessa, is like the most normal person because she became famous like 55.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. Oh, I love Ina Garten, guys. She's hilarious.
I did meet her once, and I will tell you that's like I've met some very kind people who are, notable names, but this was years and years ago, and she was just as lovely in person and but I do think you're probably right. Like partially Taylor probably is still this person, because I also think becoming famous is traumatizing in a lot of ways, and we don't talk about that enough. And we do talk about how a lot of people get frozen at the age that they have trauma at. But like, you can also get frozen at the age of like when good things happen to you too, right? Like we talk
Yeah.
about these people who like are still, reliving their high school glory days of being on the football team. Like that's probably a trauma response too.
Yeah, no, very much so. Like the homecoming of it all. Just, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
So MySpace is this wildly successful platform for a while, and then it ends up getting sold to News Corp in 2005. And kids, I hate to break it to you, but that means that Tom sold all your data to Fox News essentially, because he sold it to Rupert Murdoch. And I posted something about Tom, like just like an offhanded comment. Like I was doing a TikTok. This was probably over a year ago. And something about like I made a Tom joke, and somebody was like, Tom DeWolf, or no, Tom Anderson is actually super problematic. And I'm here to tell you guys that I searched the internet high and low, and I could be totally wrong, but I couldn't find anything other than the fact that like creating a social networking platform that like ends up, definitely having bad consequences is not great. But like I thought that like I was going to find something like Tom sexually harassed someone. And like, have you heard this story before, Van?
I haven't heard that story, but I do know that he is highly famous for like Where is Tom? Because I remember like in 2005 when they sold MySpace, he like literally fell from the face of the earth. We never heard from him again. There was just like so many talks of like he is in an island, like he sold so much money for it. Like I'm pretty sure if you try to look for him now, like you wouldn't get anything past 2005, maybe 2011. But yeah, he's kind of nowhere to be found unless you found him. He's kind of like,
Oh,
well,
I found him.
oh, okay.
I found him. And that's also why I was like, I don't know, like, I mean, you guys keep me accountable. Tell me if you can find something other than the fact that he did hack Chase Bank. But like, to be honest with you, like that's a kind of slay, Tom. All right. Like that was cool. But Tom is on Instagram today, and I'm going to read you his bio. Tom's IG bio says, former first friend, will bring love to all, inspired to connect. Hobbies, golf, surf, interior design, writing, creativity, life extension, don't die.
That's all on his Instagram?
Yeah, I know. I didn't know we had that good of a character limit these days.
I
He's
like
probably hacked it. He probably like
that sounds like a dating like little sentence in there.
Well, to me it sounds like MySpace.
Yeah.
Like,
So true, the bio.
like no one else is putting, unless you are an interior designer, no one is writing interior design in their Instagram bio, right? And then also, I don't really understand why at the end he just has to tell us don't die.
Yeah, life extension, don't die, LED. I don't know.
Uh Also his hobbies, I like that it's like first it starts off like golf, surf, interior design. I'm a little like, "Oh, okay, writing," and then it's just creativity. Like I is that a hobby or
I
so
wonder if he's still friends with the friends he had on MySpace because the inspired to connect is so him.
well, I feel like you gotta acknowledge it, right? Like you have to acknowledge that you were part of this thing that really and truly, like if you had told me in MySpace's heyday that MySpace wouldn't survive, I would have been like, fuck you. And also, do you know what time Road Rules is on?
Yeah.
Because like it was so big, but it does remind you that like these social media platforms, like they sometimes do have an expiration date. And it's kind of amazing that Instagram has lasted as long as it has.
Facebook as well. I mean, the fact that it's funny, you lose them how you get them, right? The fact that MySpace started because they kind of like made a better version of it from Friendster. And then MySpace got obsoleted just because Facebook made it more of a better platform than MySpace. So like, and then Facebook just like stayed. Of course, there was Instagram, but now Facebook owns Instagram. So we're still kind of I'm still waiting for that new app. I know people love TikTok, but that's its own kind of like controversial, like I don't even know what's happening there. And like I've heard some friends saying it's not how it used to be because of like the time that we had when it came out in the pandemic. But yeah, I'm still waiting for like another kind of a MySpace, maybe. I don't know. MySpace was like, it just reminds me of the days of like LiveJournal and like Zanga. I remember reading part of that and I was like, yes, I do remember Zanga before MySpace. Like we were just so in our desktops, like our laptops. Now we're just on our phones.
Yeah, and like being on your desktop, I think was a much more present experience because you were usually trying to accomplish something. You didn't really like mindlessly sit on your desktop because it wasn't that comfortable, right? Like,
Hmm.
so interestingly enough, there is a very current tie-in to what ends up happening to MySpace. And I had almost forgotten about this, almost as much as I had forgotten about William Rast jeans. Do you remember William Rast jeans? They were Justin Timberlake's jeans.
No,
He had a denim line.
I
And
remember
it,
I remember Nelly's apple bottoms, but I don't remember Justin Timberlake. Like I feel like I remember that era of just like celebs and their fashion lines.
yeah, I mean, honestly, it's interesting because clothing is so expensive to make that I am surprised that so many celebrities tried to have clothing brands. But if you're Justin Timberlake, what do you do? Like it's hard to do a beauty line. You can maybe do a skincare line, but that men's skincare wasn't really a thing back in, 2010 or something. So anyway, Justin always wanted to diversify. In 2011, Justin Timberlake, along with Specific Media Group, jointly purchased MySpace for approximately $35 million, which is interesting to me because I'm like, so then Justin Timberlake bought all my 2005 data.
And what is he doing with it now? Because I think he's kind of hurting right now in the industry.
Yeah, so he ends up buying it, but then it is sold to Time Inc. for 87 million. And then Time Inc. was purchased by Meredith Corporation, no relation. And then in 2019, Meredith sold MySpace to Viant Technology LLC. Guys, I don't know if it's private equity. I looked into if it's private equity. I don't think it's private equity, but that's where MySpace is now. And if you go on and you had a MySpace, I think it's like anything prior to 2012 is really like hard to access, but you can still go on the website. It's very clunky. It's very strange. I remember in like 2014 listening to an interview of Andy Dick and he was like, "Oh, MySpace is back. Like I'm back on MySpace." And I remember just thinking like, I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't know if I'd buy it, Andy. So today you can, of course, start a MySpace account, but Gen Z, I would say it's a do not buy for me. What do you miss the most about your MySpace days?
Oh man, just how you can express yourself through your page, pretty much. Finding out how to code was like a huge deal because I learned through that with MySpace. I felt like I was able to be like a graphic designer, you know? And then like the music as well was such a big part of the deal. I wish MySpace like took some sort of like deal with artists or something because it just reminded me so much of like going way back, like AOL days where they had like those AOL sessions, kind of like MySpace had that with certain artists, and they really could have like just lifted off from there.
Well, very much the way like TikTok now is making certain musical artists happen.
Yeah, yeah.
MySpace used to do the exact same thing in a lot of ways. And it's interesting to me that Facebook didn't think about buying MySpace. Maybe they did, but at the time, at its peak, what an interesting collaboration that would have been because you could really have MySpace on the music side of things and then have Facebook be more of the social networking, friendship, people in universities side. But alas, MySpace is no more. And I think that the thing I miss the most about it is honestly, there's so many little things that I remembered while I was working on this episode that came back to me. But I think it was just like the fact that like everyone had their own page. And then they got to express themselves through that because everything feels so uniform now about the way that Instagram is. And MySpace kind of felt like your like cooler older cousin who was like, I don't give a fuck. Like I'm going to post what I want. And you know, I do kind of miss that. I do miss seeing that individuality that we had on MySpace. Vanessa, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Best Week Ever Podcast. You can also stream Best Week Ever Podcasts wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Yeah, I'm having you on soon. Actually,
Yes,
in
I'm really
summer. I'm
excited.
excited. But yeah, I had so much fun talking MySpace with you. I like automatically, I know it's going to be hard to find, but I wish I can somehow find pictures or see if my login is still available.
I
in
did spend a
MySpace.
little time trying to find my own and I can tell that the profile's there, but you like can't click on it. And I'm gonna tell you, it was a really fire my MySpace photo. If I remember correctly, my last one was a photo of me holding a balloon that said, "It's Britney, bitch."
The only picture I remember is just me doing a duck face with the peace sign up, which is such a like MySpace photo, like esque.
Yeah, for the kids, we'll link you to some duck face photos because that was a moment in time. Thank you so much, Van, for hanging out. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.